Hello. It's Friday. Congratulations. You've made it to the end of another week. It seems like it's getting harder and harder every week, but maybe that's just me. Maybe I'm projecting. But it's the end of the week, so that means one last DSR Daily. And for this DSR Daily, I am joined, as always, by my host, Minna Stein. Minna, how are you on this lovely Friday? It's not raining in DC, which is an act of divine providence.
It's not raining in Virginia either, so I'm feeling like I remember what the sun is like. Yesterday, when the sun came out for the first time in weeks, honestly, I was like, what is this big, round, yellow ball in the sky? I don't remember this. It's
I felt
lovely.
like a vampire. Like I hissed at the sky when I
I kind of was, though. I had forgotten what it was like, and it is lovely.
Yes, and it's apparently looking at Apple weather, which is never wrong. It's supposed to be sunny for quite a while, so let's see if that's actually
cool
true.
For fall. I'm very excited.
It's a little too hot for fall, by my reckoning, but oh well.
I would agree with that.
Well, I'll kick us off with our first story today. And that is that in October 2023, as Israel launched airstrikes on Gaza and ordered a mass evacuation of Palestinians, internal U.S. communications revealed deep concerns about potential humanitarian violations. A senior Pentagon official warned the White House that such actions could lead to war crime accusations against Israel. While the U.S. administration publicly supported Israel's right to defend itself after Hamas's attack, private emails showed alarm over the rising civilian death toll and its impact on U.S. credibility in the Arab world. The Biden administration pressured Israel to delay its ground offensive to allow for humanitarian aid, but was criticized for being slow to address Palestinian suffering, despite mounting civilian casualties. I don't really have a whole lot to add about this. I mean, you have to wonder if maybe this private pressure being more public would have helped the Biden administration, at least for the perception of Americans, especially young Americans who have been concerned about this conflict from the beginning. I guess we'll never know kind of how that would have played out. I doubt that these emails being released now will really do anything to sway people, because ultimately the pressure campaign was not particularly successful. The ground campaign was delayed a couple of days, and then the rest is history.
I mean, this war is making me nervous for a lot of reasons, but it's also making me nervous about the election, and especially because we all know that Netanyahu is motivated largely by the fact that he wants to see Trump in office again, supporting all of his decisions and letting him have total free reign.
And there were a couple more stories I honestly could have chosen just about Israel. There's so many every day that it's hard to choose. But just to give kind of a quick summary, Iranian leader Ayatollah Khamenei said that Iran will and its allies will not back down. So it seems like that will continue to escalate. New large airstrikes on Beirut by Israel. So this conflict is not going anywhere. If anything, it's getting worse. It seems like we've kind of passed the threshold where neither party is willing to back down at this point. And that'll be disastrous for the region. It'll be disastrous for the world. It'll be disastrous for the U.S. election because, I fear the narrative that will spin out of that. We've heard Trump say a lot, these wars never would have happened if I were president, which is, of course, bullshit. But all it takes is a few people in a few swing states to believe that as this conflict gets worse, and that could tip the scales. So continues to be an unmitigated disaster of a conflict from every angle.
And every story about it makes me more and more nervous that it's going to have a big impact on the election. And of course, the last thing that we want is for Trump to be the president and just let all of this happen with absolutely zero checks or pressure from the United States. So makes me nervous about the upcoming election. But speaking of other people who took advantage of the upcoming election. The International Longshoresmen Association will end its strike and return to work today after reaching a tentative wage agreement with the United States Maritime Alliance, which includes a $4 per hour raise each year for 6 years. This deal, amounting to a 62% increase over the contract's duration, still requires ratification by union members. President Biden praised the agreement as a critical step for dock workers who kept operations running during the pandemic. Great time to go on strike during an election year.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good way to get what you want really fast.
Exactly. And they did, and good for them.
And good, because they deserve it.
Yeah.
Don't get our words twisted. I mean,
no.
It is political pragmatism on their part, but it is also
good for them.
Deserved. So great to hear.
Yeah.
Some bad union news was that hold on, let me get this right. Some bad union news, on the other hand, is that the firefighters union has announced that they will not endorse anyone for president, which is obviously a big blow to the Harris camp, who no doubt was expecting a endorsement from them. They were one of the first unions to endorse Biden in 2020. They say that there was a narrow vote by about 1%, I believe, to not endorse anyone, which led to this decision, but again, a frustrating decision. Trump is by no means a pro-union president.
No,
Pretty
and
clearly
I really
isn't. Hard to imagine why you wouldn't endorse somebody who is pro-union as opposed to somebody who hates them. But it's another matter.
And I don't get it, because the Biden-Harris administration has pulled off like win after win after win for unions in the past 4 years. This is a story about the dock workers being just one of them. Biden is very pro-union, always supports the unions, and knows exactly how to pull off a deal so that the union workers get what they're asking for.
Teamsters and firefighters unions haven't, which are two big ones. But yeah, I mean, the Biden presidency was one of the most pro-union presidencies, if not undeniably the most pro-union presidency of the 21st century. So I don't really get where the holdup is here. But it's really frustrating to see. But, I'm hoping that, as we saw with the Teamsters, where many of the local chapters immediately came out and were like, well, we're endorsing Harris. I hope the same thing happens with the firefighters union, but time will tell.
I hope so too.
Well, speaking of the Trump camp, Melania Trump has expressed support for abortion rights in a recent video and her upcoming memoir. In the video, Mrs. Trump emphasized women's individual freedom and described it as an essential right from birth, a position she further elaborates in her book by advocating for women's autonomy over their bodies and the right to make decisions about pregnancy without government intervention. Her stance aligns with a long tradition of Republican first ladies, including Betty Ford, Nancy Reagan, and Laura Bush, who have voiced support for legal abortion access, though most often after their husbands left office. Interesting.
So weird.
Very weird. Again, the main interesting thing here is that it's obviously kind of after her husband left office, but while he's running for re-election. So
yeah,
strange timing. I guess it's just weird. I mean, it's not all that surprising because it seems like Melania hates Donald. So
I mean, it's just odd to me because, like, listen, I'm very pro-choice, so good for her. It's like the one thing that we agree on. But it is weird timing to be like, out of all the things I wrote in my book, this is what I'm going to highlight in a video.
Listen, I mean, I
in
think
stark opposition of, I mean, that is true. It just, I mean, I guess added to the list of weird things going on in their marriage/family.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's purely pragmatic, and she's like, "Hey, this will get people to buy the book if I say this," which is very Trump-esque. It's very in line with what the rest of the family would do. So we can't be surprised. But I mean,
is it going to get people to buy her book though? Like,
I don't know. I mean, it's pretty interesting. I assume the idea is that people will be like, "I wonder what other things she says that break with Donald in the book." I don't know. I mean, I'm glad she supports it. She's correct on that issue.
Who's she voting for? I wonder. Then
I don't know. I bet she's probably voting for Kamala Harris, to be honest.
Oh boy.
I don't see her voting for her husband.
Don't really align on many issues based on what she wrote in her book.
Exactly.
Well, moving from the United States and the election for a minute to Mexico and the Mexico-U.S. border. Mexican authorities are investigating a tragic incident where soldiers opened fire on a truck carrying migrants near the Guatemala border, resulting in 6 deaths and at least 10 injuries. President Sheinbaum described the event as lamentable and emphasized the need for accountability. The truck contained 33 migrants from various countries, including Egypt and India, and the military reported that the shooting occurred during a chase after the vehicle failed to stop. Rights groups criticized the incident as part of Mexico's border enforcement of the U.S. immigration policies, while the surviving migrants' future remains uncertain as they are handed over to immigration authorities. So
horrible, and it's,
tragic.
As you alluded to, I mean, this is part of the rhetoric around immigration. I mean, as the temperature rises and we continue to demonize immigrants, more incidents like this are likely to happen. I mean, it's why a compassionate yet firm approach to immigration is so important. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, these are human beings. Even if you feel that there should be a stronger border, you can't treat these people like animals. You have to treat them with compassion, even still. And the Trump camp's rhetoric around this completely fails to do that. And I think it's indicative that a Trump administration would see more incidents like this, both in Mexico, because again, as it alludes to, this is part of Mexico's enforcement of U.S. policies.
Yeah.
So it has a cascading effect.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, ending on a positive story,
please,
which feels rare. The European Union's top court ruled that member states must recognize legal changes to gender identity made in other EU countries, a decision with significant implications for transgender rights across Europe. The case involves Arian Mirzarafi Ahi, a transgender man who sued Romania for refusing to recognize his name and gender changes legally processed in the UK before Brexit. The court ruled that Romania violated his rights to citizenship and free movement, as denying recognition creates substantial personal and professional challenges. This ruling, which upholds EU law over national laws in cross-border matters, is expected to aid other transgender individuals facing similar barriers across the bloc, although Romania and other conservative countries may resist its implementation. This is honestly an issue I hadn't even considered, but it does make sense. I mean, something like the EU where it's a bloc, there's free movement across the Schengen zone. I hadn't even considered the fact that if a different country within the Schengen zone or even within the EU didn't recognize your name and gender change, I have to imagine that would cause pretty thorny issues. Mm-hmm. So great to see that it's a huge win for gender equality and transgender rights, which, as we know, have been under attack, both in this country and around the globe for years, and has become kind of a thornier campaign issue in recent years. So it's great. I hope the implementation is smooth, but as the article says, I have to imagine that some of the more conservative countries in the EU are going to resist this, especially Hungary. Can't imagine that Viktor Orban is going to be happy about this. But he can just leave the EU if he wants.
Well, at least for now, it's a win.
Yeah, it is a win. And I hope it's the first of many more wins.
Me too.
But that is all we have for you today. I can't talk to Minna about the MLB playoffs because she doesn't care. Sadly, David is not here to discuss that with me. Alas, I'm sorry to all the Orioles, Brewers fans out there. It's been a disappointing couple of days for you. But we will endure as long as the Yankees don't win at all, which I'm glad David is not here to hear me say.
Fair enough.
But we will be back next week. We have a Scylla Consciousness that will be in your feed later today, so fear not, there's more DSR in the week for you. But until we join you again on Monday, have a good weekend, everyone.